All right, in this episode, we talk about infield throwing mechanics
and butt winking.
All right, Brent Porcio, Stephen Godani here at the @TopVelocity #PitchTips, #BaseballTips Show, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat @TopVelocity #PitchTips. Ask your question, we answer it on the show. If you haven't already, check us out at TopVelocity.net. Our 3X, 2X programs. We're starting to get a lot of 2X questions, which has to do with position players, catchers, for throwing mechanics, throwing velocity training. Also, our 3X programs are all pitchers. We're also going to be at the ABCA convention in Nashville coming up pretty soon. Come out there and check us out. We'll have some cool giveaways. And let's get started. What's our question for today?
James Dean asks, can you please do a video on infield throwing mechanics since you have done outfield and catching?
Luke, I'm sure you're probably asking me to do it as an analysis online. I do have some position players that I've done analysis for. If you want to check that, search it on YouTube, just through my YouTube videos. But I will continue to try to put more of those out as long as I get more infielders, outfielders, catchers wanting those videos. Just to give you a basic run through the 2X mechanics and the difference between an infielder achieving good biomechanics to put more ball speed on the ball as opposed to just using a 3X approach. It becomes a 2X approach because with 2X, you're not engaging full knee extension, because knee extension is building a long stride. We're not going to build a long stride. Timing is a big issue defensively when we're fielding and throwing a ball as opposed to a pitcher. So what happens is on an infielder, of course, you're in your low position to field the ball. You want to make sure that you start momentum going to the ball. That's where harder throwers do a very good job of getting momentum to the ball. Okay, an outfielder will start a good stride off the back leg before he catches the ball or before he fields the ball. An infielder's going to do the same thing. He's going to be very low. He's going to stride to the ball in the process of fielding it. Then in the process of fielding it, it's a shuffle step as he turns, gathers, because he's still gathering distances and momentum. He loads into the back leg as he's turned his shoulders at this point. He keeps that momentum going through the hips. And same thing we do with as a pitcher, we load the back leg, we take the force vectors, down linear, even though we try to keep torsion, same things we do with the pitchers. But when it comes to going into front foot, then we go into 2X. So we first trigger hip rotation by opening the front foot a little bit, and then we power hip rotation by extending the ankle into the hip flexor, okay? We don't really get into a full knee extension. So it's ankle into hip flexor, basically accelerating more forces that we built in the momentum into front foot. The same thing with the arms. We're separating the hands, closing the shoulders, aligning the glove side, cocking the arm into flexion, similar arm path as the pitcher. We're going into horizontal abduction at that point. Okay, and then the front foot is stabilizing. Now the front foot's going to start to extend as we go into arm cocking. Okay. Shoulder rotation, and as we tuck the glove as well, we just turn that glove over and tuck it as a fulcrum. Then we go into chest thrust, external rotation, to really load the trunk, load the arm, and then extension, internal rotation, pronation. So it is almost identical to the 3X approach with a pitcher, except we take out the full leg drive and go to a 2 extension or a 2X ankle hip flexor extension, and we use momentum going to the ball to make up for that loss of leg drive or back leg drive. So I hope that helps. That's all a big part of the 2X programs, the 2X velocity programs, which work with infielders, outfielders, and catchers. And then catchers also have the sub 2.0, which advances catchers into the sub 2.0 program. Good question. Anything you want to add to Position players?
Yeah, I'm just glad to start finally seeing some position players asking questions and stuff. And I know we focus a lot on pitching velocity, and then it's the 2x throwing velocity program. But it's not just going to help you with throwing velocity. It's going to help you with all aspects of your game. You're going to run faster. You're going to hit the ball harder. When you run faster, you're going to have more range in the field, and all that stuff is really going to help position players. So I think that's something that position players really need to dive into and start getting really good at and start turning themselves into beast athletes as well.
Yeah, because the lifting program's the same. It's actually even a little more aggressive because we know position players don't whine about weights like pitchers do. Also the med throw routine is very similar. It's just adapted to the biomechanics of the position player. Okay, good question. Next question.
El Caballete asks, I have butt wink when front squatting. How can I fix it, please?
You know, Kelly Starrett was the first one to talk about the butt wink, and it is a problem, and it's an issue because when you are squatting, front squatting or back squatting, and you break your hips, once you break your hips, you actually engage the hamstring. It's actually a full leg workout at that point. Pretty much squatting knee up, you're just doing a quad dominant workout, which actually can cause more knee problems than a full squatting approach if you do it technically correct and you're not overextending the knees and your heels are down. But when you go low and you break the knees and you engage the hamstrings, those hamstrings are tight. They'll start pulling the hip capsule forward. And what happens is the butt can't go any lower, so it starts tucking underneath. And that's what the butt wink does. You see the hips just dip. They dip under. And it's a problem because the hip is bending the spine. And when you want the spine to be as erect as you can, it will distribute the loads better. Once you bend the spine, just like bending a stick, the part where it bent receives most of the stress, and then that can cause a disc, issue. Slipping the disc, inflaming the disc,
Herniated disc.
breaking the disc, herniating the disc. So to avoid that, I usually tell guys just when that starts to happen, just come up. But to me, it's a hamstring issue. It's probably just a full hip capsule issue. One of the stretches I like is just good distraction, meaning take a band. Kelly Starrett has this in his stuff where you wrap the foot with the body band and you just pull it as far as you can where it feels like it's pulling your hip out of socket, and that helps open it up, give it more room, because if you had that kind of room squatting down, and all the hip abduction, adduction, internal rotation, even the hamstring, everything that is there to all the muscles controlling those movements. If they had more mobility and gave more room in that capsule, you wouldn't have that issue. So I like that. Plus I like all the other stretches around the hip capsule, the hamstrings, to really help with that issue. And that's really what it is. You don't have good, probably if you just look at your hip flexion, when you throw your leg up over your head, you probably have poor hip flexion. Olympic lifters, they make a requirement, or they say a good Olympic lifter has 130 degrees of hip flexion, which is really, really insane. That's because it's so critical that they deep squat. That's the only way they can catch a high amount of weight in a full clean. We don't typically full clean because we'll never get to that level of weight, but still we front squat, and we want to front squat deep to make it more of a full leg workout, build strength through the entire leg, not just the quads, and also engage more hips in the movements. And there's studies that show correlation of deep squatting to vertical jump height. So we're big believers in it. So butt winking does become an issue with it, and the best way to fix it would be through hip capsule hamstring mobility exercise. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think a great thing that Kelly Starrett says is treat the gym like it's your lab. So when you're doing exercises, you can really see your mobility weaknesses and places you have deficiencies and stuff like that. So a squat is a great one where if you're not performing correct squat technique, there can be mobility issues, like Brent's saying, like hip capsule stuff, hamstring stuff. So really use that as cues for what you need to work on, and always know that it's probably not just one thing. It might be oh, maybe I need to get my hamstrings flexible, and then you get your hamstrings flexible and it didn't fix all of that much that you thought it was going to be. You really have to go with the full overall body approach. You might need to work on your dorsiflexion, you might need to work on your hip capsules, you might need to work on your hamstrings. So really just use all of those things and use the squat and how you're performing it as kind of a guide for what you really need to work on and what you need to fix.
Yeah, good question. If you have another question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, @TopVelocity, #PitchTips, ask your question. we'll answer it on the show. Check out TopVelocity.net. We got 3X camps even coming up this weekend. Everybody have happy holidays if you aren't already, and we'll see you at ABCA convention in Nashville or the next time on the show.